Going to talk about 5 rock artists to check out if you like SZA. There'll be playlists and timestamps in the description. In the playlist, I've done this for other artists. And what I do is I listen to somebody that I'm not really familiar with, in this case SZA, but I listen to a whole bunch of the music that that artist has. And then while I'm listening to that, I just try to pick out things about what they do that make me think about other people, that if you like them and you like them for these reasons of things I'm hearing in the music, then maybe you'll like these other artists as well. So SZA's a really big deal right now. She switches in her music between like R&B and hip hop, rap for the most part. She's won 5 Grammys. She's been Billboard's Woman of the Year. She's written songs with people like Nicki Minaj, Beyonce, Rihanna. She's doing a lot with Kendrick Lamar right now. They're doing a co-headlining tour. She's only had 2 albums, but she's been on 60 singles. She's played with rock bands as well and done rock-related things. She was on What Lovers Do from Maroon 5, and she's also open for Coldplay. So there's a pretty eclectic sound to her stuff if you listen to all of it as a whole. StevieNicks, singer from Fleetwood Mac, popular in the 1970s and 1980s. In the 1980s, she's mostly well known for her solo work. SZA had, I thought, a very like 70s inspired sound to some of her music, specifically like a folk jazz type of sound. And StevieNicks, both in Fleetwood Mac and in her own stuff, often has kind of a folky jazz tinge to what she does. Stevie has won Album of the Year in Fleetwood Mac. She's in the Grammy Hall of Fame. Got such a beautiful voice, very provocative lyrics at times, and lyrics about real-world relationships and things, something also that SZA does. SZA's known for collaborating a lot with Kendrick Lamar. StevieNicks has done a lot of collaborations with male singers. A lot of stuff with Lindsey Buckingham, who was her boyfriend and was in Fleetwood Mac with her. She's done stuff with Don Henley, who was her boyfriend from the Eagles. She's also done stuff with Tom Petty that was pretty famous, although I do not believe she dated Tom Petty. Cinderella, a late 80s rock band. Some people would say hair metal. A lot of people would say hair metal. But they, to me, had almost more of a blues kind of country tinge to what they did. And that's what reminds me of SZA. There's a blues country tinge to some of her songs for sure. Cinderella is led by Tom Kiefer, one of the most underrated frontmen in rock and roll history. And like SZA was kind of taken under Kendrick Lamar's wing, there were some famous names in rock and roll that took Cinderella under their arm. First, Gene Simmons found out about them from Kiss, and then they were under the wing of Bon Jovi for a while. They also have a lot of songs that are relationship-based songs, and songs that when you listen to the lyrics, I think they're inspired by real-world events, where some of the 80s hair metal bands, you know, they're singing about some pretty esoteric stuff. I don't know how much of that stuff really happened to them, at least not in their early days of being a band until they were famous. And I always felt like Cinderella, there was something that really pulled on your heartstrings that was real true and human to who the singer was and what he was doing. Steely Dan, the brainchild of Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, they're a classic rock band, but there's a real strong jazz fusion element to them. Really popular in the 1970s and a little bit in the 80s. And that jazz fusion element and the sophistication to what they do reminded me of some of SZA's work. Her more sophisticated songs, the songs that have a little bit more complex rhythms, patterns, the songs that have a little jazzy kind of feel to them. There's songs that I thought had an archtop hollow guitar, a very specific sounding guitar, and that's what makes me think of the Steely Dan stuff. In Rolling Stone magazine, they labeled Steely Dan as anti-heroes in the music industry. They've been sampled by Kanye West. They've been sampled by Ice Cube. So I think it fits. If you're into the more sophisticated side of what SZA does, you'll probably like Steely Dan. Jewel, a singer-songwriter who I wanted to say was Canadian, and then when I looked, I saw she's Alaskan. I bet a lot of people would guess Canadian, actually. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. SZA is kind of like a singer-songwriter with some of her more folky and more country-inspired songs. And when I heard those songs, it made me think of Jewel. Jewel's a well-rounded musician. She started with yodeling, actually, but she got a scholarship for operatic voice. Often, a lot of Jewel songs are acoustic, and there's a lot of acoustic stuff I heard in SZA's music. Jewel's not just a musician. She's done some acting. In the 1990s, she was in the Broadway-style version of The Wizard of Oz, which was on TV. SZA recently did a movie, so I think there's a lot of parallels between them with that. Sleep, a stoner, sludge, doom metal band from Northern California. A lot of people might think this is a weird pick, but there was a lot of SZA songs that were like slow. They were just slow and almost minimalist to the music. And I don't know of a better slow minimalist type band than somebody like Sleep, kind of the godfathers and creators of stoner doom metal. They started as a band in the early 90s. They were a band for about 10 years. Then they stopped. Then they became a band again for a while. They're led by Matt Pike, who has an iconic look for playing with his shirt off. SZA has a kind of iconic album with her shirt off on it. Their first album was called Volume 1, and their most famous album was called Dope Smoker. They are a little bit of a hipster band, maybe you could say, because their most recent album was on Jack White's record label.